Psalm 49. Chris has prayed for me and for us, so let's dive in. I want you all to listen, each and every one of you. And if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to it on a recording, I want you to stop what you're doing right now and listen to me. What I've got to say is very important. I am going to speak words of wisdom. I'm going to speak words of wisdom, words that will make you truly wise. So I strongly warn you to stop thinking about whatever it is you're thinking about and listen to what I'm about to say. I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're from, I don't care whether you're rich or poor, young or old. This message is for you. I've thought deeply about a topic of vast importance to all our lives. I've thought very carefully about it, and I've come to the correct answer. And so I want you to sit down, shut up, and listen. Now that might seem like an odd way to start a sermon, but it's how Psalm 49 begins. Verse 1, "Hear this, all you peoples, listen, all who live in this world, both low and high, rich and poor alike. My mouth will speak words of wisdom. The meditation of my heart will give you understanding." It's a very bold opening. And if I didn't know better, I might have thought it had been written by Geoffrey Boycott, who's a particularly bold Yorkshireman. The psalm writer has something hugely important for us to listen to. And you won't get this message on BBC or on Instagram. So you better listen in. And here's the thing. Here's the big thing, you see. Here's the big issue the writer of the psalm has been grappling with and he's found the answer to. And it's here. Do you see it in verses 5 and 6? So the little number 5, little number 6 on page 572 of Psalm 49. Verses 5 and 6 as we look down. "Why should I fear when evil days come, when wicked deceivers surround me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of their great riches?" So this man is asking himself, he's saying to himself, look, I feel threatened by the wealthy people. Why is that? Why do I feel threatened by wealthy people? He is someone of modest means. He looks on at people who are wealthy and he's tempted to be frightened of them. Why am I frightened of them? He says to himself. And well, you might be frightened of the rich. There are reasons to be afraid of people who are vastly wealthier than you. The wealthy have power, don't they? They can do bad things and then buy the best lawyers to get out of it, or even pay some backhanders. So we instinctively think that we're the ones with modest means. We assume that we're like the psalmist, right, who is frightened about the wealthy. But we think about it that way because we always think there's someone wealthier than us. You always think there's someone wealthier than you. I suppose Elton John looks on at someone like Warren Buffett, the famous investor, who is supposedly the world's richest man, and Elton John probably looks on at him and thinks he's poor. And the fact is, friends, that we are all, almost without exclusion here this morning, all of us are amazingly, fabulously, filthy rich. The author and broadcaster, Andrew Marr, right? You'll have seen him on the BBC. If you can't picture him, you will have seen him. He's got this book called History of Modern Britain. It's really good. And the very last line he says, quite a big book, he says, to be born British remains an amazing stroke of luck. And I bet you thought I didn't read clever books like that, did you? But there you go, yeah, I do, you see. And I could give you some facts and figures to prove it, but facts and figures are boring, but they're all out there on Google if you want to look them up. With the facts and figures to show how wealthy we all are because we have access to education, to clean drinking water and sanitation, free healthcare at the point of need, affordable and safe transport, a police force, access to a legal system, but you don't need the facts. They're out there on the internet. But here's how crazily wealthy we all are. Here it is. Here's how crazily wealthy we all are. We all can, in the middle of winter, in the depths of February, go down to Morrison's and buy a punnet of strawberries with some loose change. In the depths of winter, with just some loose change, you can buy strawberries. I don't recommend it. Strawberries in the depths of February are disgusting, but you can get them. 100 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. Just unthinkable. We are rich as a society, as members of this society, beyond the wildest dreams of millions and millions of people all around the world and all those who have gone before us. So in a sense, we are the rich ones the psalmist is thinking about. We're the ones who he's talking about. We're the rich ones. And so I think we need to listen because this psalm is about us. And look, you're wondering what on earth this has got to do with harvest. And the solid fact is, look, harvest means nothing to us most of the time in our society anymore. So I could have picked any part of the Bible and made some sort of tenuous link. But here's the link to harvest. At harvest time, you'd feel rich. Back in the day, you'd feel rich. When the produce comes in or the catch comes in, you feel rich. I listened to a Radio 4 documentary the other day. Very interesting Radio 4 documentary about the Icelandic fishing wars of the 1950s, 60s and 70s. I bet you didn't think a sophisticated guy like me listened to Radio 4 documentaries about fishing wars of the 50s, 60s and 70s, but that's what sophisticated men do. And it is said that when the fishermen of Hull came home after weeks at sea, they were known locally as 3-day millionaires. 3-day millionaires. Because for a weekend, they were incredibly rich. And they lived like millionaires. And then it all gone. They went back to sea for another few more weeks or months, and their wives had to scratch out a living for the next few months. So that's the link to harvest. It's always harvest time for us. It's always harvest time for us. We're always amazingly rich, most of us anyway. The vast majority. You can buy strawberries in February with your loose change. The fact you can do that makes you very wealthy. So look, Psalm 49, it's the psalmist talking. That's what we call someone who writes a psalm, the psalmist. And he's talking about us, basically. He's talking about us, filthy rich people like us, and why he shouldn't be afraid of us. And so the issue for us is, because being wealthy is a blessing, but it brings an amazing danger. The question for us is, how can we not be fools with all this wealth that we have? How can we make sure that we are not foolish when it comes to our amazing wealth? You see, money, wealth that we have individually and we have as a society has this horrible, nasty effect. It masks reality. It masks reality. It covers up the reality of life and it covers up the reality of eternity. It covers it up. It makes you not see life as it really is, but this psalm will lift the lid into reality. So first of all, that was a long introduction, but the points are shorter. First of all, wealth makes you think money can buy anything, but it can't. Wealth makes you think money can buy anything, but it can't. We'd be fools, you see, if we don't realise this. And money can't buy you everything. Lennon and McCartney got this point, didn't they, in the 60s, when they sang, "I don't care too much for money, money can't buy me love." Then when you look on at Donald and Melania, you're not so sure. But there is something that money really cannot buy. It cannot buy you out of the grave. You can't pay enough to get out of death. So verse 7, no one can redeem the life of another or give to God a ransom for them. The ransom for a life is costly. No payment is ever enough so that they should live on forever and not see decay. Everything else, in some way or another, is up for grabs with money somewhere in the world, I think. But death, you see, really is the one thing you will never be able to buy yourself out of. Never. We can buy strawberries in winter with scraps of change, but we can't pay our way out of death. Best you can do with the right diet and the right treatment is to keep it at bay for a few more years. And that is literally the very best our wealth can provide. A few more years. But the grave will take us in the end. Death takes everyone, literally everyone. Verse 10, look, verse 10. The wise and the foolish and the senseless. I've often been called the last two. Verse 10, for all can see that the wise die, that the foolish and the senseless also perish, leaving their wealth to others. Death gets everyone. It's a simple fact, and of course everyone knows it, but the point of the psalm is that everyone knows it, but everyone tries to forget it. And great wealth, like we have in our society, tends to make forgetting it rather easy. You see, what we've done is we've built up all this wealth around us, a society of enormous wealth, and it gives us a sort of a sense of permanency. Many of us here, though I know not all, but many of us here are homeowners. That in itself, of course, being a homeowner is an incredible luxury when set in the history of the human race. Many of us here are homeowners, and we invest into our homes and make our homes nice and comfortable. We become very attached to our homes. How often will you point out to someone when you drive past it, a house that you used to live in? We become very attached to these things. But they outlast us, don't they, our homes? They outlast us. Unless something very drastic happens to the house we live in, it will outsee me. And sometimes I think that'll be rather soon. The homes we make for ourselves here on earth are just temporary. incredibly temporary, but death is our home forever. Verse 11, their tombs will remain their houses forever, their dwellings for endless generations, though they had named lands after themselves. Though they had named lands after themselves. Well, you might not have done that, but people have. Cecil Rhodes named a country after himself, Rhodesia in southern Africa. Didn't stop him dying, though, in 1902. And the name of his country that he named after himself didn't last long either. Rhodesia became Zambia in 1964 and Zimbabwe in 1980. Now, perhaps the closest you'll ever get to that is something like a personalised number plate, which always seems to me quite a strange preoccupation, but each to their own. But even if you can name a country after yourself, it doesn't stop you dying like everyone else. No amount of wealth, and we are fabulously wealthy in our society, no amount of wealth can pay our way out of the grave. So don't be foolish with the wealth we have. Don't be foolish and fail to see that. Secondly, wealth makes you think you'll live forever. Wealth has this tendency to make you think you'll live forever, but you won't. Verse 12. Do we see that? The little number 12. People, despite their wealth, do not endure. They're like the beasts that perish. The Bible gives a wonderful picture of who we are as human beings. Who we are. If you're not a Christian this morning, I suggest to you that this has a ring of truth about it, unlike any other explanation you are likely to find. The Bible tells us that we are made with a humble dignity. We have a humble dignity. I have dignity, first of all, because I'm made in the image of God. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 1 and 2, are made in God's image, aren't they? Unlike the other animals that God had made, he had made Adam and Eve to rule like him, rulers over the creation that God had made. So he made us different from the other animals. We have a dignity. I don't care how clever people tell me their dog is, or a dolphin is, or a chimpanzee. They've yet to work out how to play a musical instrument or complete Angry Birds. So we have a dignity about us, a great dignity. But we're humble too because we are animals. We are creatures too. And in that sense, we aren't different to dogs or dolphins or chimpanzees or maggots. We had to be made, unlike God, who is eternal. And so while I am made in the image of God, I still have to die like the animals. Verse 12, despite our great wealth, we are like beasts that perish. And you see there's a grim picture in this psalm. There's a grim picture. And I hope it won't give you nightmares, but maybe that's what we need. Verse 14, they are like sheep and are destined to die. Death will be their shepherd. A shepherd who is called death. What a grim picture. And Halloween is coming up, and I know many of us find it funny and just a bit of fun. But we talk about death as if it can't get us, but it does. Death is the shepherd. You go to the grave, and the grim picture is there's a shepherd there, and the shepherd is called death. Fabulous wealth like we enjoy doesn't stop us dying. People do not endure. Middle of verse 14. Look at this. Their forms, their bodies will decay in the grave, far from their princely mansions. Death, you see, the psalmist is saying, death renders everything pointless. It makes owning princely mansions ultimately pointless because we are put in a box in the ground. Leo Tolstoy was a Russian writer. I'm really doing well today, aren't I? I'm packing in all these cultural references here. You think I'm very bright, but I'm not. Leo Tolstoy was a Russian writer considered one of the greatest who's ever lived. He wrote a short story called How Much Land Does a Man Need? How much land does a man need? In the story, a farmer is offered a wonderful deal by a wealthy family who own a vast amount of land. They tell this farmer that for 1,000 rubles, he can have as much land as he can mark out in a day between daybreak and sundown. The farmer can't believe his luck, and he sets out early in the morning and spends all day pacing out and marking out the land. At the end of the day, he's marked out this huge area for himself. But as the sun sets, he realises that he's far away from the family who had made this wonderful deal to him. So he runs back as fast as he can to shake their hands. And the wealthy family, they cheer him as he returns to them, running to them. They cheer his good fortune. But when the farmer gets to them, he collapses and dies, worn out from the day's effort. And so the farmer's family, his wife and his children, they bury him in a grave 6 feet by 2. And so Tolstoy, the writer, answers his question. How much land does a man need? How much land does a man need? 6 feet by 2. That's how much land a man needs. Death makes the riches of this life pointless. The Bible makes the point clearly, but other thinkers have realised the same thing. But they have no answer to it. Death makes riches in this life pointless. Enjoy them by all means. The Bible's not, as many people think, the Bible's not against wealth. Enjoy wealth. Give thanks to God for it like we're doing this morning. And share it. Be generous with it. We're not saying we want to live in poverty. But the Bible is saying wise up in regard to the great wealth that we share. Be wise in regard to this wealth that we have. And the last way this vast wealth we have masks reality is that thirdly, wealth makes you think you'll be rich forever, but you won't. Wealth makes you think you'll be rich forever, but you won't. And so the psalmist, you see, he reaches his answer. Remember, his question was in verses 5 to 6. The question's in verses 5 to 6. Why shall I fear when evil days come, when wicked deceivers surround me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of their great riches? And he reaches his conclusion, and his conclusion is in verse 16. Here it is. Here's his answer. He says to himself, do not be overawed when others grow rich, when the splendour of their houses increases, for they will take nothing with them when they die. Their splendour will not descend with them. And remember, we're the really rich ones. That's us. And so he's saying to himself, look, don't be overawed, man, when the rich get richer. Don't panic. Don't worry. Don't think you're missing out, man. He's saying to himself, death is coming to everyone. And it makes all the riches of the wealthy, and that's us. It makes all our riches ultimately worthless. You see, wealth, fabulous wealth, like we enjoy in this society, lies to you, lies to me, because it makes you think you'll be rich forever, but literally nothing goes with you when you die. Which, of course, everyone thinks they know, but they don't know it. Everyone will tell you can't take it with you. It's a proverbial saying, isn't it, in our society? You can't take it with you, but they don't really know it. And perhaps we don't really know it because we don't do anything about it. Can't take it with you. But it doesn't stop us living like we're going to. You see, there's knowing and there's knowing, isn't there? Now, we are blessed people. We're not lucky, as that writer I quoted earlier said. We're not lucky. We are blessed. That's how the psalmist puts it even. Verse 18. Verse 18, though while they live, they count themselves blessed. We are blessed with so much in this life, but it is all fleeting. It's all passing. Death makes all of our wealth ultimately meaningless. It's all fluff and froth and candy floss, which is okay, because candy floss is quite nice. But don't make the mistake of thinking all this wealth that we enjoy is what life is ultimately all about. Don't be fooled. Because if we are fooled by it, then we die. And then verse 19, we'll never see the light of life again. Never see the light of life again. Death is an outer darkness, and it comes to all of us, and it lasts forever. And I think we all know this instinctively, don't we? We all know this instinctively, that when we die, our experience does not end. Nearly everyone seems to think that life goes on in some shape or form after we die. There's some kind of ongoing experience for us. And you know people think like that because they go to Wakefield Cathedral and they light a candle for their dead loved ones. Because their hunch is that their dead loved ones are out there somewhere. They're not sure where or how. It's just a hunch that they have. And it's a hunch that points us towards reality. But we need the truth of the Bible to make it clear to us. My mum used to go to our local parish church and light candles for our dead relatives all the time, and perhaps it helped her remember them, and perhaps it helps you remember yours. But what I do know is that it does nothing for them. It does nothing for them. You can't say a prayer for the dead because it's too late. It is too late. And so that's why we need to be wise in this life, friends. Wise in this life with regards to our enormous wealth. I mean, really are very wealthy. You might not be personally wealthy. Your bank balance might be zero. But just being born in this country makes the vast majority of us incredibly rich. But this wealth that we have will not last forever. One by one, we join everyone else who's ever lived, rich and poor alike. We go to the eternal grave, an eternal grave which Jesus Christ called hell. Verses 19 and 20 of Psalm 49. They will join those who have gone before them, who will never again see the light of life. People who have wealth but lack understanding are like the beasts that perish. Our worldly riches will not last forever. So wealth makes you think you can buy anything, but it can't. It makes you think you'll live forever, but you won't. It makes you think you'll be rich forever, but you won't. And look, if all of that has mingled up into one sort of big thing in your head, then don't worry, that's a good thing. The psalmist really is just drilling home one big thing. Fabulous wealth in this life, at the end of the day, really counts for nothing. It is nice, we give thanks to God for it, but it's terribly dangerous, and in the end it counts for nothing. Death makes it mean nothing, and let's be clear that the death we talk about here in this psalm is not the kind of death that you know nothing about after you die. It's not the kind of death that says when you're dead you're done. It's a death that we experience forever. Verse 11, forever. We will dwell in the tomb for endless generations. Verse 14, there's a shepherd in the grave. The shepherd called death. It's an ongoing existence. And Jesus Christ is very clear. Jesus more than anyone. That eternal judgment and hell are real. And the Bible, you see, the Bible doesn't want you to be rich for a while. It wants you to be rich forever. You would be richer in heaven. Those of us who will be in heaven will look back at, if we can look back at all, some shadowy view back on this life. And we'll think all the riches that we have was nothing. You can have true wealth in heaven forever if you get wise. And this psalm tells you how to be wise when it comes to wealth. It tells you how to be truly wise. You see, while you and I may not be wealthy enough to buy our way out of the grave, God is. God is wealthy enough. He can pay enough to get us out of the pointlessness of life, where eternal death is the end. And you see, he's paid that price. The price that we cannot pay. That's the news. That's the good news this morning, friends. That's the real wisdom here. God has paid the price. Remember verses 7 to 9, I looked at them earlier. No one can redeem the life of another or give to God a ransom for them. The ransom for a life, the ransom, the price you pay, the ransom for a life is costly. No payment is ever enough so that they should live on forever and not see decay. No one can pay it. No one can pay enough to redeem us from eternal decay apart from God. And the psalmist seems to know that. Verse 15. But God will redeem me from the realm of the dead. He will surely take me to himself. To redeem something, you have to pay a price for it. And none of us can pay the price to get out of death, but of course God can. God is the only one wealthy enough, and he has. 1,000 years after this psalm was written, God sent Jesus Christ, his son, into the world to die as a ransom price for our sin. Jesus said, isn't it, about himself in Mark 10:45, that he was a ransom price for our sin, for our idolatry, for turning away from God to worship the wealth that he has given us. Instead of him, the giver, he sent his son. That's how much he loves us. Sent his son, Jesus Christ, to pay my ransom and to pay yours. The ransom price was the death of Jesus, the Son of God. That's how much it cost. And Jesus rose from the dead, didn't he? He rose from the dead, and God is saying the transaction's complete. The price was paid. It was more. It was enough. Enough for your sin and my sin. We know that with confidence because Jesus is alive. And through faith in him, we can look forward to the riches of heaven.